Just when you think California couldn't come up with more ways to make life harder for responsible gun owners, they go and raise the stakes again. Starting on July 1st, 2025, a new regulation will go into effect that bumps the background check fee for buying ammunition from $1 to $5 per purchase. On paper, that might sound like pocket change, but if you're someone who actually shoots regularly, whether it's for personal defense, training, hunting, or competition, this isn't a minor tweak. Those fees pile up fast, especially if you're on a tight budget. But this isn't just about the money. It's about putting yet another roadblock between law-abiding citizens and a constitutional right. What's especially troubling is that this fee hike has no legal cap. That means there's nothing stopping lawmakers from raising it again, down the line, $10, 15, maybe even 20. All it takes is the right excuse. I'm bringing this up because folks deserve the full story, not just sugar-coated headlines. I still remember back in 2019 when California first introduced background checks for ammunition sales. At the time, a lot of us thought it would be a minor inconvenience, maybe just a way to keep criminals in check. But like a lot of so-called common sense gun laws in this state, it quickly became something else entirely. A system designed to chip away at your patience and your wallet. This $5 fee is written right into California's penal code, under Section 30,370. That section gives the state's Department of Justice the authority to charge background check fees on ammo transactions. When they rolled it out, they said $1 would cover administrative costs. Fast forward 6 years, and that number's jumped to 5. And because there's no built-in ceiling, they can keep raising it whenever it suits them, claiming inflation, budget shortfalls, or whatever political spin they come up with next. Let's be clear, this isn't a one-time charge, and it's not some yearly membership fee. That $5 gets tacked on every single time you buy ammunition. Doesn't matter if you're picking up a single box of .22 long rifle to plink in the backyard or a couple boxes of 9mm to hit the range, it applies to all of it. There's no discount for volume buyers, no break for families living paycheck to paycheck. Everybody pays, no matter what. And here's the part that gets glossed over. Every time you go through one of these checks, your personal information, your full name, home address, and your firearm-related history gets logged and stored by the California Department of Justice. This isn't just a fee, it's a data collection operation, a digital paper trail tracking every legal gun owner in the state. Now, $5 may not seem like a deal breaker on its own, but when you zoom out and see the bigger picture, it's one more cut in a long line of them. Between California's regular sales tax, the federal excise tax, background check fees on both guns and ammunition, and the brand new 11% state tax on all firearm-related sales, it's getting harder and harder for everyday folks to stay in the game. This isn't regulation, it's discouragement, plain and simple. When I first heard about the increase, my mind didn't go straight to politics. It went to the kind of people I see at the range every weekend. Retirees who shoot once or twice a month, single moms trying to stay safe, working families who grab ammo when it's on sale, college students living in rough parts of town who want something they can trust at home. These aren't people hoarding thousands of rounds or prepping for the end of the world. They're just everyday Americans trying to stay capable and confident. I've been there myself. There were times when cash was tight, and I'd swing by the store for a box of .40 caliber or 20-gauge shells while doing the weekly grocery run just to stay sharp without breaking the bank. That kind of buying strategy doesn't work anymore. If you're paying an extra $5 every time, your $15 trip turns into $20. Do that a few times a month, and you're looking at $75 to $100 a year in extra fees just to buy ammo you're already legally allowed to own. And remember, we haven't even factored in sales tax yet, or California's brand new 11% excise tax on guns and ammunition, not to mention local fees that stack on top. When you add it all together, the picture gets ugly fast. You could be paying nearly double for a box of 5, 6, or 30-06 in California, compared to what it costs just across the border in Arizona or Texas. Whether this was by design or not doesn't change the outcome ordinary. Folks are being priced out of exercising a basic constitutional right. Not everyone has the means to stockpile ammo or plan months ahead. And let's face it, the people who can't afford to buy in bulk are often the ones most serious about protecting their homes and families. They're the ones who need reliable access the most, and they deserve better than being hit with hidden charges every time they try to stay prepared. This isn't just affecting hobbyists or the usual weekend shooters. A whole demographic is being quietly squeezed by these new rules, and most media outlets barely mention them. I'm talking about older Americans, retired military, veterans, folks out in the countryside who still keep a rifle or shotgun handy. For them, picking up a box of 30-06 or 12 gauge is part of daily life, not some niche pastime. It used to be a straightforward errand. Now it feels like jumping through hoops just to stay legal. And let's not forget people dealing with disabilities or limited mobility. Sure, $5 might not seem outrageous on paper, but if every ammo run also means burning fuel, dealing with physical challenges, and navigating inaccessible stores, it turns into a real burden. These shooters often can't take advantage of sales or bulk buys, so they end up spending more often, with fewer options to work around the system. Then there are the newcomers, folks purchasing their first firearm, stepping into this world for the very first time. Instead of finding a clear, supportive process, they're hit with forms, background checks, scanning systems, ID verification, and now a higher fee just to buy a single box of ammo. That kind of bureaucratic maze doesn't educate, it intimidates. It discourages honest citizens from participating in something they have every right to do. That's one of the quietest forms of suppression, creating a legal process so dense and expensive that people just give up. This isn't about rare edge cases either. These are real people, neighbors, coworkers, folks at church, veterans from your local VFW hall. When you build a system that punishes people for following the rules, you don't just hurt the Second Amendment. You break faith with the idea of fairness itself. Even people who've never touched a firearm should be paying attention, because once this pay-to-play model becomes normal, it won't stop with ammo. It could show up anywhere at the DMV, the ballot box, or when you try to access basic public services. This is about more than bullets and background checks. It's about gatekeeping, making essential rights harder to reach for the people who need them the most. When governments quietly impose fees that disproportionately hit low-income communities, they create a dangerous precedent. And once that idea takes root, there's no telling where it stops. On the legal front, I've been keeping tabs, and the fight is far from over. For years, lawsuits have been challenging whether California's ammo background check system holds up under the Constitution. One of the key cases is Road versus Bonta, which went straight after these restrictions. Back in 2020, federal judge Roger Benitez ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, calling the law confusing, unreliable, and inconsistent with America's long-established firearm traditions. But before gun owners could celebrate, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals stepped in and put that ruling on ice. That freeze kept the background check law alive while appeals continue. So as of now, the law still stands, and come July 1st, that $5 per transaction fee becomes the new normal. Still, this story isn't over. With the legal landscape shifting, there's a real possibility this issue could climb all the way to the Supreme Court. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision in 2022 changed everything. The court laid down a firm rule. Any gun control measure must align with the nation's historical traditions. And let's be real, charging citizens money every time they want to buy ammunition? That kind of tax on a right wouldn't have made any sense to the Founding Fathers. The right to keep and bear arms was never meant to be a privilege reserved for the wealthy or powerful. It was written into the Constitution as a safeguard for every American, regardless of income or background. So when the government begins tacking on fees, however small they may seem, it stops being a shared right and starts becoming a paywall. That should alarm anyone who cares about liberty, no matter their political leanings. As of July 1st, California's new ammunition background check, fee $5 per transaction, is officially in effect. But don't mistake that for a final outcome. The legal battle is still raging, and in fact, we're starting to see some cracks in the system that's held these policies up for years. One major breakthrough came recently in Nguyen versus Bonta, where the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously overturned California's law restricting people to one firearm purchase every 30 days. That's not just a procedural win, it's a massive shift in tone from a court that typically hasn't favored Second Amendment advocates. It's a clear sign that even some judges in historically anti-gun jurisdictions are beginning to question how far is too far. And all of this ties back to the Supreme Court's landmark ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Decided in 2022, that case set a new constitutional standard. If a modern gun law doesn't reflect historical practices from the time of the founding, it doesn't pass muster. Let's be honest, charging citizens a fee every time they want to purchase ammunition? There's no historical precedent for that. The founders wouldn't have tolerated it, and neither should we. The Second Amendment was never about affordability, it was about universality. Yet every time a fee is added, even a small one like $5, we inch closer to making that right a luxury good. Imagine being charged $5 to cast a ballot or speak at a town hall. Most Americans would find that outrageous. So why are we okay with it when the right in question involves lawful gun ownership? This isn't just about a single fee, it's about a long chain of little obstacles. Each one may seem harmless on its own, but they pile up fast. Before long, exercising a constitutional right starts to feel more like navigating a maze designed to wear you down. Groups like the California Rifle and Pistol Association and the Second Amendment Foundation have been sounding the alarm for years. And they're not wrong. These organizations argue that this model, charging people just to participate in their own rights, would never be tolerated when it comes to free speech or religion. But when it's about firearms, suddenly, that kind of barrier becomes acceptable policy. The CRPA has gone as far as calling this $5 fee part of a larger plan to slowly price responsible gun owners out of their rights. And let's be honest, they're not just guessing. This pattern shows up in law after law: fees, taxes, permit delays, restrictions that hit the working class and rural folks hardest. It's not about safety, it's about control. The Second Amendment Foundation, in particular, has highlighted how these laws hit economically vulnerable communities the hardest. Whether you're dealing with low income, live far from a store, or have mobility challenges, this kind of policy creates real barriers. For these Americans, it's not just about money, it's about access. And once access is lost, the right itself starts to erode. These advocacy groups aren't extremists. They represent everyday people, hunters, veterans, parents, first-time gun owners who simply want the government to respect what the Constitution guarantees. And make no mistake, their legal teams are often the last thing standing between your rights and the next bureaucratic overreach. What worries me most isn't just this new fee. It's the quiet way it was slipped in, tucked into budgets, buried in legislative codes. These changes rarely make headlines, but they're incredibly effective at shifting the ground beneath our feet. They're not bold, sweeping mandates. They're small enough to seem insignificant, but designed to accumulate until the cost of compliance is too high for ordinary folks. We cannot afford to sleep through this. Every minor regulation deserves full scrutiny, because even if you don't own a firearm, the principle is what matters. If the state can slowly put price tags on one right, what's to stop it from doing the same to others? What begins with ammunition could end with voting booths, speech platforms, or churches. So here's what I'll say, plain and simple: stay alert, stay involved, know what's happening. Whether you're a seasoned shooter or someone who's never handled a firearm. The precedent being set here affects everyone. Because in the end, the true cost of apathy will always be far more than $5.